We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
Worldview Tube is your place for breaking news and current events. Stay up to date on news that actually affects you. We cover all the bases: politics, economics, current events, Bible teaching, and more. We have reporters all over the world, from America to the UK and Israel. Get the latest updates on the war in the Middle East with on-ground reports from our reporter, Aaron Labarco. Stay informed on everything politics with our host, Roger Stone. Learn how everything going on today relates right back to the Bible with Brandon House's Bible study on Sunday night. Stay up to date with the latest breaking news and stories every night on our primetime show, Brandon House Live. Watch our old school 30-minute straight news show every night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time to get the news you won't hear anywhere else. We are the ultimate uncensored, uncontrolled news source with over 30 years in business. Check out our website and all of our other platforms and apps for free at worldviewtube.com.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I mean, the top line is the 5-point advantage that Kamala Harris had in our last poll is gone. What's behind that shift?
Yeah, exactly, Savannah. I mean, just look at them side by side and you can see it. Remember that poll we took a month ago that you see here? It was just after that first Trump-Harris debate. Since then, we've had the VP debate. There have been some campaign activities, some interviews, some things that have changed in that time. I think this might be the biggest for Harris. We just asked the basic image perception people have. Is it positive or negative of these candidates? The Trump number's always been been somewhere in this territory. In fact, this is a little bit high for him, believe it or not, 43% positive. But look at Harris, 43 positive, 49 negative. The significance, we polled this a month ago. She was 48% positive and 45 negative. She was above water, as they say. That's completely reversed. It now looks very similar to Trump's. That's a pretty big shift when you're talking about a race this close. And then there's the weight of the fact she's the VP in an unpopular administration. We asked about President Biden's policies. Are they helping or hurting your family? Just a quarter of voters said they're helping. Nearly half said they're hurting. And then here's the interesting twist. We also asked folks, think back to when Donald Trump was president. Did his policies help or hurt your family? And look at the difference. 44% helping, 31 hurting. Trump's, the retrospective, you would say, opinion of Trump's presidency among voters, arguably higher now than when he was president.
And
October surprises always happen. Welcome back to True Thursday on the Rob Maness Show. And we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. I'm not really surprised by this one, though. But the Kamala collapse predicted by the pollsters that I trust is happening before your very eyes. As you just saw, not even the NBC polls can hide it anymore. If you look at this Real Clear Politics average electoral votes map, the chickens are definitely coming home to roost, even though the regime media tried their best to keep her numbers higher than they should have ever been. One of the other October surprises we've seen is what appears to be a hoax about an assassination attempt at President Trump's Coachella, California rally. And hopefully we'll be able to talk to political icon and host of Worldview Tube Stone Zone, Roger Stone. Yes, that's the Roger Stone in the second half of the show, who knows the accused, along with some other colleagues of mine that know the accused, Mr. Vim Miller, who's an ardent Trump and MAGA supporter. But his flight's been delayed, so we may end up having to reschedule that interview again. However, this guy Miller, he's a member of the independent media, too, and a major Trump supporter. So Roger and I will discuss that incident, especially this local sheriff, Bianco, from Riverside County, who was photographed kneeling to Black Lives Matter thugs in 2020. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. But first, we've got the head pollster for Rasmussen Reports to discuss their recent polling in swing states and the daily tracking polls. Mark Mitchell's not only Rasmussen's head pollster, he's a fellow veteran and a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. Mark, hopefully we've got the technical difficulties addressed, and welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Okay, go ahead and show the electoral map. All right, we're having some technical difficulties getting Mark on board, and we will continue to work through that. This is the electoral map from the Real Clear Politics averages. So what they're showing just yesterday, as you can see, Donald Trump is at 302 electoral college votes in their estimate. There's an even more recent one that came out this morning. I didn't have time to get it into the show that has him around 312 because Kamala's interview answers, or lack thereof, from last night on Bret Baier on Fox News have her cratering even more than what we're seeing now. Well, let's go over to the audience. We've got some hands up over there while we're waiting to see if we can get Mark on and take some questions about either the interview or the polling we're seeing. Your choice. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Rip, sir.
Thanks, Shel. Good afternoon to you, Colonel. You know, every time I listen to your show or I listen to Colonel Towner, I get more and more pissed off because I feel we all should really feel betrayed by our own federal government. And I was listening to you talk about the pipe bomb earlier, especially that situation. But this is what I'm going to say about this Harris woman, because I vow to never call this woman the vice president of this country because she don't deserve it. She did not earn it. And so therefore, I would not acknowledge her as that. But I will say this. I was in the barbershop the other day, and I happened to run into a conversation with some people in the barbershop, and I showed them evidence of what is going on with our children and what they're doing to our country. And they had no clue, Colonel. They had no clue that any of this was going on. And I told him that's because you won't open up your mind and look at what's really going on. You refuse to. It's time for us to stop being held hostage by this Democrat Party. This is what I'm telling our Black community, because it does not make any sense to continue to be held hostage by these people and with their fear mongering. Yeah. So the question I have for you is, do you believe that eventually we're going to get answers behind that pipe bomb that was found?
Yeah, I actually do believe it, Rip. Thank you for the question. We do have Mark Mitchell on with us now, the head pollster from Rasmussen Polls. You missed that great introduction that I gave him. Thanks for coming back on, Mark. Yes, as soon as we get Donald Trump elected, we will get answers on that pipe bomb. To answer my audience member's question, Mark, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Sorry about the
really
technical
happy to be here.
difficulties. Yeah. So the collapse that we were discussing a few weeks ago when you were on the show about Kamala, it's happening right before our very eyes, isn't it?
Yeah, the mainstream media narratives weren't enough to get her over the hump. Turns out she's super inauthentic in a way that voters don't like. Imagine that. It was kind of predictable.
I'm laughing because it's a good day, to do this post the interview with Brett Baer, and I think that's her lack of answers there is even increasing the rate of collapse and cratering with this person, because she absolutely has no authenticity, like you said.
Well, even the strategy is just totally suspect. Like, she knew that it was going to be her hardest interview. She knew she was probably going to get raked over the coals, and she knew that, according to Fox News viewers themselves, the number one issues are the border and the economy, and their record's kind of bad on those things. So when she was met with those questions, it's almost like she talked over the questions and tried to change what Brett was asking her and try and create some alternate reality where her MSNBC gaslighting bubble extended into Fox News. And everybody watching that was having their concerns dismissed or gaslighted away. You're not changing voters' minds that way. It's like she didn't even know she was supposed to be there to try and change voters' minds. And according to my polling, that's what she needs to do, because she's losing independents right now, and that's why she's losing. She has no message for them.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting, because Fox, as much as I don't like it, they do cater to an audience of centrist Republicans, independents, and Democrats, quite honestly, and they have very high ratings in those demographic categories from a political perspective. And she didn't even appear to try to change any minds or get people to come over to her view of policies. I mean, her one policy answer was, well, I've got 80 pages of very specific policies on my website. You can go read them if you want to at the very end, and then we saw Doug Schoen, who's a Democrat pollster, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
On Laura Ingraham last night, sending alarm bells. I mean, what does that say about some kind of confirmation of the polling that you're seeing and that other trusted outlets are seeing today?
Well, a couple things to say there. First is, I would say that the content of Fox News doth not necessarily their viewership make, because we asked when we went into September and did 10 swing states and got 10,000 results. Fox News viewers go Trump 80% to 18% Harris. And that's almost as close as Newsmax viewers, who go Trump 92% to 5%. The number one issue for Fox News viewers is illegal immigration, 49%, another 32% rising prices. So it doesn't really matter what, the hosts on Fox News say in the aggregate. It was hostile territory, and she went in and basically, I don't even know what you can call that. But the other thing about polling is, if anything, in my polling, it's kind of moving back towards Harris a little bit as things get closer to Election Day. The race has been locked in. I've had Trump +2 5 weeks in a row, and I think it's 7 or 8 weeks where race has been +2, ±1 point. But what's crazy is, about a week and a half ago, starting the previous Monday, is really when what I thought was coming started to play out, in that the boost that she got from the date wore off, and everybody all of a sudden started to wake up to the reality of the polling. The polling's always been bad for her. The Pennsylvania Real Clear Politics page, if there's any leftward leaning polling error at all, it's a Trump win. It's been like that for 6-7 weeks. Everybody's known it. It's nobody in the media has been willing to interpret that way. And then immediately what happened is some of the left-wing news media outlets started to sort of put trial balloons out there, like warning signs for her campaign. And that debate happened, and then all of a sudden the betting markets flipped. So the betting markets are doing a better job than the media is at interpreting the poll.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I wanted to dive into a little bit in this next segment, Mark, is about the betting markets and how you see that as a pollster, because it's really like off the charts. Donald Trump, like 60+% this morning, I think. So on one of them, anyway, we got to take a break. We'll be right back, and when we come back, you'll see a little clip about black women and Kamala Harris, which really surprised even me, and I'm pretty skeptical of her. We'll be right back with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports.
We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live
All right,
in
everybody, that
our
wraps
own
up.
governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again, this is a black margin among black women. Look, Obama won him by 93, very large margin. Clinton won him by 93, a very large margin. Biden did a little bit worse at 85, but then you look here and you get a 71-point margin. Now again, these are large margins, but the bottom line is when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among black women based upon history, and of course she would be the first black woman president, but she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among black women since 1960, if this holds true.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is the head pollster for Rasmussen Reports, Mark Mitchell. And Mark, before we went to the break, you were talking about how you've shown the race very tight, within a couple of points with Trump up for several weeks now. I was looking at your daily tracker, I think this morning. It might have been from last night before we came on, and you changed the number of folks that you poll in that daily tracker to 500 from a lower number a couple of weeks ago, I think. I wanted to ask you, are you seeing any significant differences in the outcomes or less? Because you were getting a lot of swings people were asking you about.
Well, the overnights were swinging a lot, but it would be suspicious if they didn't with 400 sample. I mean, it's plus or minus 5 margin of error. The reason I put those numbers out was just to help people understand that when you see Reuters Ipsos go from Harris +1 to Harris +6 over a 1 month period, that's not real. That's manufactured. The race hasn't been swinging around like that at all. And so what that shows is that Donald Trump is basically tied to up by a point or two in the national popular vote, which is 5 to 6 points better than he was doing 4 years ago, and way better than he was doing against even Hillary Clinton, which means, like, by extension, the swing states should basically all go Trump. Now, the swing state polling has been tougher, and I haven't been able to poll as much states as I would like. I think what you're seeing is a lot of statistical herding in the swing states, everybody kind of ducking it out and not wanting to put sort of their necks on the line. And only now that the narrative has shifted against Kamala Harris are you starting to see positive for Trump swing state numbers, because everything has been basically a complete tie on the Real Clear Politics aggregate. And again, I'm saying it's hard for people in the media to interpret that when they don't want to show that Trump's winning. But any pollster can go in and look poll by poll and say, man, these all look really bad for Harris, since we all know the media leans Trump. And the poly market, betting market, went ahead and did it for the media. They just said, no, like we're taking this as a Trump win. Now, am I endorsing betting markets? I like the poly market guys, but people are just putting their money to work. It's totally possible that they're wrong and that it's just being flooded by pro-Trump people trying to make money, and maybe the market will turn against them. Maybe. But in my opinion, it's accurately representing the state of the race. And it took it a while to get there. I thought that maybe there was a little bit of manipulation going on in some of the swing states. But once that vice presidential debate happened, Pennsylvania flipped. And then once Pennsylvania flipped, it all came crashing down. And that's a $1.6 billion market. There's no amount of money that's going to be able to game the national betting market there, because that money would be better spent on campaigning or advertising or whatever. So yeah, you showed Harry Enton, and what surprises me there is like that stuff he's saying about the polling showing the black vote moving against Harris. That's not new. It's like they've only come up with that realization in the last week. They could have done that same story back in March. They could have done that same story in August. And I've been trumpeting it that the Democrats are hemorrhaging black support for years. And now all of a sudden, it's only like in the last 3 weeks where they're getting super introspective about it. And I think that's maybe because they're trying to protect the credibility and prepare their viewers for a reality that Trump's got a really strong shot and is, in fact, the favorite.
Yeah, what really caught my attention was that those numbers were black women, because the narrative has been, young black men are going to Trump, but the black women are and women in general are solidly in Harris's camp. So that got my attention on that. And do you think now you're polling? You did do some polling in Pennsylvania that you reported out over the weekend, I believe, and Trump is up there in your report, right?
I've been working 15-hour days getting swing state polls out this week. We did 6 of them, and they're all done, but they're not all necessarily out. We had Pennsylvania up 3, which is a 3-point move to the right since September. I think our swing state polling in September was too close to the debate. I think there was a little bit of a response bias. We had North Carolina, Trump +5, really strong showing for him. I think Michigan was tied. Wisconsin was +2. All the Senate candidates are doing way better than they were. And then I haven't said these to anybody yet, but Nevada looks like a Trump +2 race. And we did Ohio as well. And I don't know. I don't feel great about that sample. It was a little lefter leaning than I would have expected. But, it's still Trump +7. And we have Moreno with his first positive result of anybody in the industry. So I guess we'll see if that plays out.
Yeah, I saw a +1 report on him this morning, which surprised me. My PAC supports him, has been for a long time, so that's good news for us. Maybe I'm not Nevada. Nevada is a really hard one to poll. It's a smaller sample. It's really tough to get people there. I think there's a lot of fog of war. I think Arizona shifted way to the right, and there should be a little bit of a carryover with Nevada. But again, every single one of these results I'm saying is caveated to, I'm not getting out over my skis and making like super tinfoil hat predictions of what might happen based on voter registration returns and mail-in ballots being down and the hidden vote that's not showing up in the polls. I'm just taking my data stream, and it might not necessarily be geared and sensitive enough to pick up massive shifts in the union vote, which has like organizational and grassroots knock-on effects, right? Or shifts to first-time voters that may show up in a number that I haven't predicted. And so there's all these reasons why Trump might outperform our polls. In my opinion, Nevada might be one of those states where everybody's just kind of surprised. I think Pennsylvania will be as well, because everything I hear about the ground game and the way that the momentum is shifting there favors Trump. And I mean, to be honest, there are scenarios in which Kamala Harris outperforms the polls too. I mean, they all look really tied on real clear politics. The expectation is that the polling error all leans left. But in 2020, the polls were kind of miraculously and strangely spot on in Arizona and Georgia. Make of that what you will. And then there's just the chance that, let's
like acknowledge the fact that Donald Trump motivates people in a way that doesn't necessarily show up in all of these other measures, and maybe the TDS vote will be strong and drive an even bigger turnout than it did in 2020. But my bet is on all of these disconnected voters who saw Trump lose, lived through the Biden administration, and are now crawling over broken glass. I think we'll probably be surprised to the right.
Yeah, I think now we've lived through 3.5+ years of Biden and Harris, and that's what I hear. When I hear anecdotally people talking, especially amongst young men, doesn't matter what their race is. It's about the cost of gas, the cost of groceries. I can't afford to get a mortgage on a house because interest rates are through the roof. And none of that can effectively, at least I haven't seen them effectively do it yet, effectively be tied to Trump's administration's actions. Can it?
No. When people are asked about how successful the Trump administration was, it outperforms the Biden administration. And we asked back in the beginning of September, in general, have President Joe Biden's policies been mostly successful or mostly failures? Independents say failures, 57%, 31%. It's roughly tied with black voters. Not even a majority say mostly successful. 18 to 39-year-olds say failure, 48% to 38%. That's really inescapable for them. And then we also asked, as a presidential candidate, does Kamala Harris offer a fresh start in a new direction or more of the same? And more of the same wins, 58% to 37%. It wins by a plurality among 18 to 39-year-olds. Independents, 62% to 30%. So, I mean, there's so many measures that show us the Biden administration was bad. Joe Biden himself is the most signal-producing demographic in all of our crosstabs, even more than party. And then over and over again, what you'll see is polls that show Kamala Harris up, and then also winning independents. And listen, like when I have independents saying 62% to 30% that Kamala Harris offers more of the same, I mean, it doesn't even matter if I'm off by 10 points or not. It's still cataclysmic fundamentals for her. I mean, there's no way to fake that. And independents say by a majority that Donald Trump is the fresh start and a new direction candidate. So she keeps saying that, people should turn a new page. That's not the right message. In my opinion, that comes back to what she did on Fox News, which is she has no message whatsoever to reach out to these people who are concerned about the economy and the border. This is not an election about abortion. That's a flat out lie. That issue is not the most important issue to really anybody, not even MSNBC viewers. So to come on Fox News and your strategy to get new voters is to literally try to change the conversation to lie that all of voters' concerns about their key issues are fake. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, the fact that she's doing as well as she does is what's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw your post about the abortion issue, that it's not even close to being the number one issue. Where does it fall? And what is number one that you're seeing?
Okay. I'm drawing from 10,000 likely voter responses from September across 10 battleground states. Number one issue, economy, 36%. Number two, border security, 17%. Abortion is third, 14%. But if you look at women, it's only the number one issue for 18% of them, 19% of 18 to 29-year-olds, 25% of Democrats. And then we asked it in a different way and only limited the choices to 4 choices: abortion rights, illegal immigration, rising prices, or protecting our democracy. Which issue is the most important one for the next president to solve? Compared to those other 3 issues, abortion only gets 18%, 32% for Democrats, 21% for women, but the numbers are highest among CNN and MSNBC watchers. It's still only 30% and 28% of them. But the issue that floats to the top for them is protecting our democracy. That's 48% of MSNBC viewers. So really, it's about Orange Man bad, but it's easier to have abortion as a rallying cry. But I mean, overwhelmingly, Fox News and Newsmax viewers, 85% of them say rising prices and the border, and independents and black voters. It's like literally across the board. Only the most liberal people even acknowledge abortion as like the second most important issue.
Wow, that's totally different than the mainstream narrative that's being pushed for what, 3 years now, 2 or 3 years. We've got some questions from the audience. If you got time to take some, let's go ahead over there. And Shell, go ahead with the question.
We have checkmate, sir.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I got a question. How is the polls done? I've been in the military since I was 18. I'm 56 now. And I've lived on stateside, overseas. How are the polls done? I don't realize nobody that I've met has ever said they got polled. How is that done?
That's a great question.
One of
the reasons that I follow Rasmussen is because of their polling methodology. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, we believe in full transparency on this. And I will start by saying polling will always be important. And I think predicting the outcome of elections isn't even the most important thing we do. I think really we're the only sort of check and balance to the media. If the media doesn't do their job, if the media becomes a propaganda arm of the government and voters don't get what they want, how do you even know what voters want? In our opinion, that's our job. And quite frankly, we don't need to be within 1 or 2 points. Election prediction is a lot harder because you do need to be within 1 or 2 points. And I will say polling is important. Polling will always exist. But year after year, polling is getting more expensive and harder to do. So 20 years ago, everybody literally just called folks up on the landlines, and that's before spammers were a thing and do not call lists. And you could get a pretty representative sample of pretty much the entire country. Those days are over, and pollsters are now looking for alternative sources of data and experimenting. And what many of them have done is either shift to their own proprietary panels. So Ipsos is an example of one of those. They signed up just 60,000 people, and they just poll those people. And I think they pay them money as well. So you're never going to get polled by Reuters Ipsos because they have their own proprietary panel. Other people are reaching out to folks on cell phones. It's super expensive. You have to do it manually. You can't robo-dial. And you might not even be able to get a really good sample because although you reach everybody, very few people will pick up their cell phone and actually talk to a pollster. So at a certain point, you're finding out more about what kind of people pick up cell phones than about a representative sample. So what we're still doing is 55% of the electorate is still over 50. We have 400,000 people in the country who have answered a Rasmussen poll in the last 4 years, and there's still 90 million landlines. So half of our polling still comes from landline robo-dialing. It's anonymous, and people don't have, they're not shy with the robot caller. It's a system that's worked for us, and we're going to use it as long as we can. For the people who are younger, more minority, we go to online panels like other people do. They're becoming more tested, and we think that we're reaching between 500,000 and 1 million people through these online panels. You can sign up to take online panels if you would like to through a panel aggregator and actually get paid money. I'm not as confident in the data as I am with landline phones, but any data stream, no matter how garbage it is, can be calibrated to be useful information. The big issue in polling this cycle is that many pollsters over the last 4 years have shifted to be online only. And in my opinion, that's a very challenging and untested thing. So if people are still going to miss majorly to the left, I think that's one of the key reasons.
Yeah, see, I mean, it's a lot more complex these days than it used to be. And I first came into politics as a candidate in 2013, and the polling methodologies, what I had to learn about how to do it, who to hire, those kind of things have completely changed based on what you just said. It's a challenge. It is a big challenge. But How do the now I have a question about that. So how do the mainstream pollsters?
Thank you very much for answering my question.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. How do the mainstream pollsters? How are they when we say they're rigging something or something's not quite right? What do you see that that they're doing that can cause that kind of thing, or is it even identifiable?
Yes and no. That's a really challenging question to answer. There are multiple layers in which polls can be misrepresented. In my opinion, the number one is that the media will just cherry pick whatever results they want to report on to craft a narrative. And there's plenty of examples of that. The second, I will say, there's no amount of polling transparency that will 100%. People call for transparency in the industry. It will never fix anything, because you're always going to have an organizational body who is biased. Like, look at 538 as a polling aggregator, totally biased. And even if there was complete transparency, you wouldn't know if somebody was doing things like purposely cultivating a leftward-leaning proprietary panel or even just deleting data points. You'd never know. So there's no amount of transparency. And so ultimately what it comes down to is you got to look at the crosstabs and see what the internal details of the demographics look like so you can compare poll versus poll. And I'll give you a really good example. New York Times came out and had a Harris +3 poll in Pennsylvania. And it's one of the only blue results in Pennsylvania. It's polling the average left. But if you go look in the crosstabs, you can see that they asked people who they voted for in 2020, and they said Biden by 8 points. But Biden only won by 1. So that poll oversampled Biden voters by 7 points. If you corrected for that, it would be a Trump +4 poll, which is the most right-leaning poll in Pennsylvania. Now, we could debate why that happened. I personally think the New York Times managing editors told their pollster there's no way you could show Trump winning Pennsylvania. But that's a really great example about how the internal demographic details show you that the poll means something totally different than what's being reported. And the good news is that you don't need to hit some kind of occult dark knowledge to be able to go in and look at these crosstabs and just say, let me compare this to another poll, and does it make sense? And time again, you're going to find these things like ABC News Ipsos polls, where if you look at candidate favorability, Trump only has a 33% favorability rating, but Kamala Harris has 47%. And the net favorability of Donald Trump is like 25 points worse than her. Now, they're waiting for party. They're sampling Republicans, and yet everybody in their poll hates Trump. So it just shows me, it's like, wow, they only have Harris up 3 or 4, but everybody hates Trump in this poll. They're probably in the vicinity of where I am. So I'm constantly looking for that stuff, but I can't check every pollster. Everybody watching this and listening to this can go right to Real Clear Politics and start diving into these crosstabs, and you'll probably make Nate Silver cry inside when you do that.
I loved your post about he's just drawing on paper with crayons, I think, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing what I think I read earlier
yeah,
today.
I mean, like,
well, we got to take a. I'd like to hold you over for one more if I can, Mark.
Yeah, sure.
We've got to take a commercial break real quick, but when we come back, we'll see a little jab from Kamala at Donald Trump using the military to go after his political opponents. And I want to get your take on that and maybe dive into what you think about the effect of fraud on what's going on in America today with our elections. We'll be right back with Mark Mitchell, head pollster of Rasmussen Reports, after these messages.
Worldview Tube is your place for breaking news and current events. Stay up to date on news that actually affects you. We cover all the bases: politics, economics, current events, Bible teaching, and more. We have reporters all over the world, from America to the UK and Israel. Get the latest updates on the war in the Middle East with on-ground reports from our reporter, Aaron Labarco. Stay informed on everything politics with our host, Roger Stone. Learn how everything going on today relates right back to the Bible with Brandon House's Bible study on Sunday nights. Stay up to date with the latest breaking news and stories every night on our primetime show, Brandon House Live. Watch our old school 30-minute straight news show every night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time to get the news you won't hear anywhere else. We are the ultimate uncensored, uncontrolled news source with over 30 years in business. Check out our website and all of our other platforms and apps for free at worldviewtube.com.
Talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and my guest is the head pollster for Rasmussen Reports, Mark Mitchell. And Mark, you're a military veteran, and when I see that clip, I think about the phrase, the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, Steve Bannon's in prison. Peter Navarro just got out of prison a few months ago. They want to put Jeff Clark in prison. They still want to put the president in prison. They're going after Gateway Pundit. They went after the CFO of the Epoch Times. I'm surprised that you're not on their hit list yet, because a lot of people accuse you of your polling of being far right, which is nothing further from the truth. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that and really maybe dive into it a little bit about the effect that this type of approach is having on the polling numbers. And I think it bubbles
I can't
up
show
a little
my wife
bit
this. I can't show my wife this clip now. It's going to freak her out. But we have been swatted 3 times. I will say that people have, so we have been swatted. Now, I will tell you, I think we're actually an independent and unbiased pollster, although what we are guilty of is wrongthink, and that's kind of dangerous. And it's because we're polling on topics exactly like you're talking about. We found that 64% of likely voters think that the DOJ weaponization indictments of Donald Trump were like what happens in a banana republic. So people have concerns. But again, like over and over again, the talking points that she uses are not geared towards independent, working class, middle America people who she needs to earn the votes of. It's geared towards basically the San Francisco liberal and Upper West Side crowd over and over and over again. And I just don't know why they think that that's working for them.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. You mentioned that the number 48% in the phrase protecting democracy. I think you were talking about on the Democrat side, maybe of the 48%. Is that the message that they're buying? Or is it something else to do with January 6th, or what is the message they're buying? I mean, because when she went to that in the Brett Baier interview, it surprised me that she was so aggressive about it.
Yeah, I do. We have polled a ton on January 6th. I honestly brain dumped most of it. Democrats off the charts think that it was a bigger threat to democracy than the Civil War and whatnot. We picked the words protecting our democracy in this most recent issue set question, though. And it again comes down to the media and how people are consuming it. It was 48% of MSNBC viewers, but when you combine it with abortion, 75% of swing state MSNBC viewers are focused on these issues, which essentially are Donald Trump is going to take them away from you. Trust me, bro. That's what those people are voting for. And in Newsmax and Fox News, like 85% of people protecting the border and rising prices. Those are things that Joe Biden did take away from people, like objectively. Yeah. And so I look at that rift in America, and nobody else is tracking this, but we actually polled on the increasing threat of civil war, and the numbers are absolutely horrendous. This is just out of Pennsylvania, from this week. And where's the number here? 46% of swing state Pennsylvania voters think it's at least somewhat likely a civil war is going to break out in the next few years. Only 14% of people say not at all likely. 72% of 18 to 29-year-olds think a civil war or revolution is likely in the next few years. 26% of them very likely. 56% of Republicans. That's because people are viewing two different Americas, one in which basically the orange man is bad and one in which they're not. And I think the mainstream media and increasingly the government itself are to blame for that. And I can back that up with numbers as well. We also found that 64% of voters think that the intel agencies are influencing political news in America. That's incredible. So people understand. It's like, I guess everybody but the people who watch MSNBC, like, this is what they want people focused on. And I think it's a disgusting establishment kabuki theater that to have the right and the left attack each other on these like totally gaslit versus objective issue set.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's why I picked that clip because I've seen those numbers. When I go down the list that somebody put together on X, there's like 15 points on it. It's all the Harris-Biden administration using the legal system to go after their political opponents. And in some cases, it's pretty close to borderline on using the military and those kind of things. And Trump's record doesn't show that he's going to do that. Well, we got another question from the audience. Let's go ahead and take that real quick before we get to the end here. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Lucky Dog, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I was wondering if you had any credible information on the congressional race. That is, what parties may end up taking what house. Thank you.
So I would say congressional districts, quite frankly, are tougher and tougher to poll. And it's really not like what we're focused on. But what we have been doing is asking the generic ballot in every single swing state we go into. And recently the trend has been that Trump outperforms the generic ballot, meaning, who would you vote for if the congressional elections were held today, a Democrat or a Republican? And that's because Trump has gotten more independents and crossover Democrats than traditional Republican candidates. But increasingly, and especially in the polls this week, what I've noticed is the generic ballot has been doing better. So Trump is now at rough parity, depending on the swing state. The generic ballot, I think, was Republican +2 nationally. And it's right in line with where Trump does in these swing states. So our polling has Trump tied to up at the margin of error in most of the battlegrounds, meaning that if Trump does well, and I think he's going to outperform even our polling, he should have coattails that carry the congressional races with him. I'll also say that the Senate candidates have been lagging Trump in each of the states. I don't want to get into all of it, but I have reasons to believe that some of that is an artifact of the online panels and that they'll do better than the polling on average says. But I do think they're doing worse than Trump. And so looking at the Senate, I think we get to a Republican majority we polled Montana, and I think Montana is a Republican pickup. We just are going to put out Ohio tomorrow. I think Moreno is going to win that. And then I think that there's a reasonable case to be made that Trump's going to get most of the battleground states, and that should be a few Republican pickups as well. So the Senate looks pretty good. Again, it's tougher to say about Congress, but with a national popular vote win for Republicans, should be kind of like what we saw in 2020 with a modest pickup. 2022, sorry. Excuse me.
Great question. One of the things I've been hearing a lot the last few days is about Wisconsin and Hubday, I think is the way you pronounce Mr. Hubday's last name. He's up against Tammy Baldwin. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much of her performance about that, but I'm seeing even mainstream polling that shows him within 1 point of her at this point. I mean, have you guys had a chance to look at Wisconsin yet?
Yeah, we just if the crosstabs aren't up now, they will be within the hour. We had Wisconsin going Trump +2, and I think we had Hovde down 1 point. So it sounds like, I haven't checked his races on Real Clear Politics recently, but it sounds like we're in line with other people. Yeah, here. Oh, that's us. Hey, we're up. Look at that. That's the poll you're talking about right there, right? That's we literally just showed up on Real Clear Politics. Let me click to see what else is going on in the race. Insider advantage, right in line with us. The Hill Emerson, I think they lean a little bit left. Quinnipiac is all over the place. Trafalgar has Baldwin up 2. He's got a shot. He definitely has a shot.
Yeah.
If Trump coattails and Trump outperforms the polls, he might get over the hump. Yeah.
That's a pleasant surprise. Do you think, Mark, I saw some numbers, and I've seen a lot of reporting the last 48 hours just on voter registration numbers, and that Republicans are outpacing. And then I wanted to ask you about what I saw just before the show started, and that is that party identity numbers, I think in 2016 they were like D+8, 2020 something like D+3, and now they're Republican +1. How significant is something like that?
So are you talking? You're talking about the Gallup numbers that they've been putting out? Yeah, I think the trend that matches the trend. Although we've been less aggressive in shifting our weightings over to Republican. Again, sometimes the Democrats, outperform on a national level, especially in off cycles, and so you don't want to be surprised. We're still Democrat +2 right now. I do think there's a case to have Republicans up because of the Republican registration advantage. We're not baking that into the polling. That's one of the reasons I think Trump might outperform our polling. A lot of people are talking about the Gallup party ID numbers that have been put out. And what happens is when they force leaners, meaning they ask independents, well, are you closer to Republican or Democrat? I think it gets up to Republican +3 or 4. And I think our polling is relatively in line with that because our independents break right. And so if we were to force our independents, I think we would get something very similar. So I'm comfortable with our weightings. But also when you look at the registration advantage, what's crazy is that Republicans are doing way better than they have before. They have an advantage almost across the board on Democrats. But independent registrations are massive. And so it all comes down to how those people break. And ultimately, who wins is going to be decided by independents. The pollsters who had independents going to Trump are going to be, it all comes down to whether they're right, or the people like Morning Consult that have the independents going for Harris. I can say that we haven't really shifted our methodology that much, and we had independents going to Biden by like 12 or 13 points. So we've seen a massive shift of 20 points to the right in independents. And maybe that happened over 4 years in our data and we haven't corrected for it. Or maybe everybody saw what happened in the Biden administration and they're going to crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump.
Well, yeah, I mean, just look at the example of what's happening in Western North Carolina right now, as far as looking what's happened under Biden. The poor response that the federal agencies and his lack of ability to get the military out quickly and those kind of things, and reliant almost totally on civilian responses initially, and even to this day, the strength is in the civilian volunteer responses to that disaster. That's what we're hearing from people up there. I did some interviews on North Carolina twice this week and talking to citizens that are in that impacted area, and that's exactly the phrase they use. These people will crawl over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump because of what's been happening to them. So as far as the drivers of the independents, with such a big swing, what are you guys seeing that drove that? Anything specific?
Yeah, I mean, the economy and the border. Independents agree with Republicans and vote very similar. They're not a fan of Bidenomics. Their grocery prices have increased and has changed the way they've had to eat. They call the situation at the U.S. border a crisis and overwhelmingly say not enough is being done to prevent illegal immigration. And the big one is they're not better off than they were 4 years ago. Here's North Carolina numbers I pulled up while you were talking. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Only 41% of North Carolina voters say yes. 41% of independents, 52% of independents say no. Will today's children be better off than their parents? 26%, that's horrible, of North Carolina voters say yes. Only 17% of independents. Only 41% of 18 to 29-year-olds. That's really sad. Do you trust the United States federal government? Only 33% of North Carolina independents. Wow. This is a referendum, and the right track, wrong direction numbers too. It is a referendum on the Biden administration. Again, it's just insane. And like I said, I think there's a case that Trump outperforms the polling. And if that's what happens, and we look back retrospectively, even we will have been too left. And it's crazy. It will be crazy for how strong the fundamentals of the race pointed to a massive Trump win. And yet nobody would allow themselves to, with intellectual honesty, actually like approach it like, objectively in the media, right? Like, you're not hearing that discussion. And again, I think that's what may happen. I think there's also a scenario where we're all surprised by a Democrat massive outperformance. I don't think that's what's likely. But history has shown us that there are surprises sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely right. Before I let you go, I have to ask you, because you guys track on this voter fraud issue from 2020. You've done some reporting, a lot of reporting on it. Are you seeing anything that gives you cause for concern at this point in the process, as compared to what you already know? Because you're constantly calling people out. Hey, look at this evidence right here. As far as going forward over the next 19 days.
You're not simulcasting this to YouTube, are you? I don't want to get anybody demonetized. So no, I'll
don't
say,
worry.
okay.
They've already canceled my channel on YouTube once. I have a personal account and I expect it to go anytime. So go ahead.
Well, we've still been doing pretty well. Believe it or not, YouTube's been one of our best partners for spreading medical and election integrity misinformation. Like some of our top viewed videos are about vaccine safety and stuff like that. But I will say, okay, there's more than one employee at Rasmussen Reports. I focus almost entirely on the numbers, but to be an accurate pollster, I have to understand if there's election fraud in America. And in fact, we're one of the only pollsters that acknowledges it. Our main account, Rasmussen_poll, will signal boost the outcomes of any official investigations, court proceedings, like real reporting, not, tinfoil hat stuff. Yeah. And so I think that's a reason to follow us. And I will honestly tell you that the way the industry works, if there's a surprise election, most people just retroactively change their party weightings. And so any incremental election fraud gets baked into polling like real voters, to be honest with you, almost ubiquitously across the board. And I do think that we have a massive corruption issue with our elections. That's bad news for most people. But I'm coming from the public opinion perspective, and if voters are concerned about something, then it's a problem for us. 70% of swing state voters, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, the number fluctuates a little bit, are concerned that the outcome of this election will be affected by cheating, including a majority of Democrats. That's what's happened when you, for 4 years, gaslight people and call it a big lie. And even the Republicans are complicit in that nobody wanted to look at these uncomfortable facts. And here we are with 7 out of 10 voters in the battleground states, like not confident in their electoral systems. And that's because time and time again, every one of these things that could improve things are ignored by both parties. Paper ballots, independent bipartisan audits, voter ID. Like voters want all of that stuff by a majority, even Democrats. And routinely they don't get it. I will say there's probably, across the board, we're seeing less mail-in ballots. That's a good sign. I think across the board, you're seeing more of an emphasis on oversight by Republicans. I think there has been some ratcheting up of Republican legal efforts. I don't know how far that goes. And specifically, I don't know if there's anything that's happening that we don't know about. And I also suspect that your average battleground cheater in a really crooked precinct might be concerned about surprises as well, and that might have a chilling effect. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. But there's just blatantly obvious things like the fact that I think it was Politico or whoever a month and a half ago ran an article like, hey, everybody, there's 9 million overseas voters. Isn't that great? Maybe we'll decide the election. Like, I mean, how Orwellian is that, right?
It is. Well, I appreciate you answering the question, and that's exactly what I was looking for, because answering from a data perspective and the facts and actual reporting is the right way to go. Another reason why I follow your account, man. Well, we'll get you back, maybe not before the election, but definitely afterwards, because I can't wait to do the show talking about your record. because I laugh every time I see a story about Rasmussen getting pulled off of this or off of that or shut out of that because when you look at the numbers are really, really accurate. So, Mark, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much today, and look forward to what's going to happen in this election.
Yeah, anytime. Maybe I'll be back for a victory lap, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Well, Monday, More War Monday, we've got Gordon Chang, China expert. He's got a new book out. Should be a fantastic show. I'll see you next week on Worldview Tube.